Item B, adopt resolution approving master water sales agreement and water supply assurance between the City of San Bruno and the San Francisco Public Utilities Commission. Adopt findings for purposes of the California Environmental Quality Act and delegating authority for the city manager to sign the agreement for individual sales with the San Francisco PUC. And just as a matter of clarification on there, the first action that the council is going to have to take is to adopt the findings and then approve the master water sales agreement if they're so inclined, and then third is authorizing the city manager. So, Har?
Mayor, council members, back in 2006, the city council authorized BASCA to negotiate on our behalf a water service agreement with the city and the county of San Francisco. Since then, between 2006 and today, the city manager, Connie Jackson, coordinated with BASCA the ongoing negotiation, supported by the Public Service Department, and Connie represented the city interest during this negotiation. I will present our Jensen, who is the Chief Executive Officer and the General Manager for BASCA, to give you a brief update on the master contract and also the CICWA and the individual water contract.
Thank you. Mr.
Welcome,
Mayor,
Art.
members of the council. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. Let me get set up here first. Thank you. One second. Do you know which one?
Yes.
Is it this one? Great. Again, it's a pleasure to be here tonight. This presentation will take us through the purpose of the agreement, the background, the major provisions, the schedule for action. I can give you an update on how many agencies have approved the agreement so far this evening, as of this evening at least. Basics first. The purpose of the agreement is to ensure that the citizens of San Bruno have a reliable supply of high quality water at a fair price. And because you have multiple sources of water, I want to clarify at the outset for you and the public, this is only dealing with the water you purchase from San Francisco. This agreement has no impact at all on your use of groundwater underlying the city of San Bruno. You currently have two contracts with San Francisco. The existing master contract, which is about to expire, contains all of the provisions that are common to all of the agencies that buy water from San Francisco, including the new agreement will include the services that San Francisco is to provide, which is far embellished over the existing contract, and the costs that you have to pay. It determines what costs they are able to charge you and then allocates those costs between all of the wholesale customers and the customers within the city and county of San Francisco itself. The second agreement that you have is an individual water sales contract, and that is in your packet as well. And that contains the information relevant to your relationship with San Francisco that is unique to the city of San Bruno. In terms of the agencies that are a party to the existing contract, it's 27 agencies outside San Francisco. They are all potential signatories of the new contract, and I'll give you the end of the story right now. If you approve these agreements this evening, you will be number 24 of 27. So 23 of the agencies have approved as of last night. As Clara said, you did authorize us to negotiate on your behalf in August of 2006, as did all of the other BASCA members, and that authorization included specific objectives which we had hoped to achieve on your behalf. I would like to say at the beginning that we have met or exceeded all of those original expectations. That is not to say that we got everything we wanted, however, and I'll clarify what we did and did not get in a few moments. The agreement does articulate what services San Francisco is to provide. It does that in far more detail than the existing contract. It protects your financial interests and obviously those of your customers. It has a term of 25 years. And one of the things that we did not bargain for was a limitation on the water that is available to the agencies. And I have a slide which describes that in more detail toward the end. In terms of the things that we did achieve, this list, the next list of 10 items are the objectives that were in the documents that you reviewed 3 years ago when you authorized us to negotiate. The first was that San Francisco complete rebuilding the system, all the seismic upgrades, the $4.4 billion of improvements they're making by 2015. That is in the agreement. They've agreed to that. Next, that they'll maintain the system. It's much more robust maintenance clause in this agreement than in the current agreement. One of the reasons for that is that we're good negotiators. The other reason is that you strongly want them to properly maintain the $4.4 billion worth of facilities that they're building at this time. No point in having a 25-year contract with facilities that deteriorate during the period of the contract. The next, and I'll only go through a few of these, the delivery of water equitably in the event of a major disaster. In other words, if there is an earthquake, it was important that San Francisco not operate this regional system so that all of the water goes to San Francisco and none of it gets to you. That is a matter of state law at the present time, but that law is going to expire in a few years. This puts it in your contract for the next 25 years, and that's a very valuable protection. And it's also a protection to San Francisco. If they're not selling you water, they can't collect your money. So it's good for everyone. I'm going to skip on to the water quality provisions. Your current contract has no water quality provisions. This contract says they have to serve you water that meets state and federal standards. This is important for a number of reasons. One of the important reasons is that the state has given the city of San Bruno a permit for its water system. And as one of your approved sources of drinking water, it cites the San Francisco system. So certainly San Francisco should commit in a contract to provide you water that will satisfy the permit the state's given you. The second reason that this is important is that you're paying for all the treatment plants, the treatment chemicals, the personnel, and so forth, all the sampling, monitoring, and so on, to ensure that the water is safe. So again, it's reasonable that this be in the contract, and it now is. Finally, with respect to these original objectives, charging you a fair price. The contract does not set the rates. It sets how much money San Francisco is entitled to collect from all the wholesale customers each year. And that is a distinction. So it limits how much money they can collect from all of you, but if they wish to adopt a rate structure that charges some agencies a different rate than others because of the way they use water, their patterns of use, and so on, they are free to do that at some future time. Currently, they've adopted rates that mirror those of the past. All the agencies pay the same amount for a given amount of water. One of the things this contract does do, though, is it retains the best of the existing contract that you have. It's lasted for 25 years, and it was designed to protect your interests. It was a contract that was born out of a lawsuit about water rates, and it's done an excellent job of protecting your interests and making sure that we can tell that you're only paying a fair amount for the water that you buy. All of those provisions are retained in the new contract. If anything, they're made more efficient, simpler, and better for you. The crux of the fair price, excuse me, is that you only pay for actual costs and you only pay for services and facilities that benefit you. You don't pay for things that don't benefit you, and you don't pay just on budgeted amounts. The rates are set on budgeted amounts. At the end of the year, there's a true up and you only end up paying for actuals. Finally, another objective that the agencies had going in was that they wanted to mitigate the high fluctuations in the wholesale cost of water from San Francisco, and we were able to achieve that as well. In addition, the existing contract created a supply assurance. It lasts in perpetuity. It's the only provision that survives the termination of the existing contract. That obviously is retained. In terms of drought, this contract includes a provision that allocates water between San Francisco's retail customers and the wholesale customers in the event of a drought. And then finally, two other new provisions. One is that if San Francisco wants to develop a water project to increase the supply assurance, the amount of water available to your city or the other cities, they have to do so jointly with BOSCA. It has to be by a separate agreement with BOSCA. Why is that important, and why is that in here, and why is it to your benefit? It's to your benefit because without that, San Francisco could build a new water supply. They don't need new water. They could charge you 100% of the cost, and you would have no say over whether they did it, how they did it, and what the cost was. That's called a blank check. Not a good idea. The contract now says if they're going to develop a new supply to increase the supply assurance, they do so in conjunction with BOSCA. You have a member on the BOSCA board, you get to vote on that matter. The next item is slightly different. It says if they want to develop a new supply to substitute for existing supplies, their existing supplies, they can do so, but they've got to share information, provide you the opportunity to go and testify and so forth. Why is this different than the one before? And why does this exist at all? It exists because when San Francisco was going through the environmental work for their $4.4 billion program, there were commissioners and officials in San Francisco that said, you know, we should develop a new supply to not use so much Tuolumne River water. Preserve that for the environment. That is a completely legitimate public policy issue. It's not joined in the agreement. That is a decision for a future date. But if they do that, if they develop a new supply to substitute for an existing supply, you should be able to testify. You should get the reports that are the basis of their decision, and you will. They are free to go ahead and do so, make the decision to do that if they wish. But there's a big difference between this item and the one before it. And that is that under number 4, if they develop a substitute supply, they're going to pay a proportionate share of the cost. They can't bill it all to you. They have a dog in that fight. Their customers will be impacted. And so there is sort of a common sense of responsibility that they would share that you would benefit from. Now, San Francisco did something last October which we did not count on and which has a potentially serious impact to all of you. What they decided to do unilaterally, it was their decision to make, was to limit how much water they would sell you, at least until 2018. They will make a decision in 2018 as to whether or not they sell you more. They took this action for a very specific strategic purpose. They had a program EIR in front of the Planning Commission in San Francisco. That EIR needed to be approved. It needed to go forward without being contested if they were to keep the seismic rebuilding program on schedule. That's important for everybody. We don't know when the earthquake's going to occur, and we want them to complete that program. So what they elected to do in the face of a lot of opposition about taking more water from the Tuolumne River was to limit how much water they would provide to you. The consequences are that unlike all of the planning that had been done as part of that PEIR, they will not be meeting your projected needs through the year 2030. In addition, they've elected that they would enforce this limitation with an environmental surcharge. In other words, if agencies use more than some particular amount, you would pay more for the water you use above that limitation. Finally, another consequence is because they're not following all of the planning that was done to the year 2030, San Jose and Santa Clara, who are temporary customers, unlike San Bruno, which is a permanent customer, they're temporary customers and their water supply from San Francisco could be reduced or cut off. These are serious consequences, and we're hoping to avoid all of them. With respect to what the agreement provides, if you approve this agreement tonight, the agreement, first of all, that the supply limitation does not affect your perpetual contractual right to a certain amount of water. That is unaffected by this. Secondly, the agreement has that the limitation also applies to San Francisco. With respect to the environmental surcharge in the same amount would apply to San Francisco as it would apply to San Bruno or any of the other agencies. Now, the limitations above which San Bruno might have to pay this environmental surcharge has not yet been set. It will be set by San Francisco before the end of December of 2010. And finally, with respect to the agreement that you're considering this evening, it does not say that you agree to this limitation, that you agree to the surcharge or the limit above which it would be imposed. As a matter of fact, it retains your right to contest the limitation, and that's important. So what we did do in the face of San Francisco's unilateral decision was to ensure that you would be treated fairly and on par with the customers in San Francisco, and that this process would be managed, but we also preserved your ability to contest it. Lastly, with respect to the major provisions, there was a significant change with respect to how you repay San Francisco for their capital improvements in the regional water system. You still only pay costs, but you pay at a different time. The timing has changed significantly, and I doubt that you're interested in all the details. I could go on at length regarding this, but let me just say that it saves you money. The rate increases you're going to experience over the next few years are not because of the agreement, they're because of this rebuilding project. They will be virtually identical to what they would have been under the old agreement. It saves you a lot of money over what San Francisco would have agreed to otherwise. It shortens the period of time over which you repay your obligation to San Francisco, so you're not saddling future generations with debt. And we heard last week after San Francisco met with the bond buyers that this last statement was not just a speculation, but is actually true. It improves the bond buyer outlook. In other words, we will all pay less for the bonds that are required to rebuild the system. I'll close with this slide. San Francisco approved the agreement on April 28th. 23 agencies have approved it. You would be the 24th if you did so this evening. And with that, I'll be glad to take any questions you might have.
Any questions from council?
Through the chair, just curiosity, I think you explained it in the supply assurance. Because of the drought, there's been some articles bandied around the state and some enlightenment on how water rates have skyrocketed in some areas and how private enterprise has purchased water rights and water, mostly in the Imperial Valley and in the valley. Bosca eliminates any chance of private enterprise in purchasing water and and selling it wholesale at a higher price or something.
Yes, the article you're referring to was about the Kern County Water Bank, and this agreement has nothing to do with that or anything like it. So,
no chance of something of that nature.
Not as long as you've got a representation on our board, no.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Action, council?
Well, before we actually, I don't have a question, I just have a comment. Art Jensen has been fabulous doing this. It's one of those things that you see the end result, it's a 10-minute presentation, but he's been working on this for months and months and over a year, 2 years? 3 years.
3 years.
I knew it was a long time, I forgot. Time goes fast, so it's been an extreme challenge. San Francisco's leadership has changed, focus has changed, the world has changed in those 3 years, but he and his team did a fabulous job getting this agreement to us. So with that, I'd like to introduce a resolution to adopt the water master plan agreement.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember O'Connell.
Excuse me,
Excuse me.
before you start,
Oh,
could
1
we
minute.
make sure you're,
Yeah,
Are we doing the,
first,
did I do it right?
we have to have a motion first to adopt the findings for the purposes of the California Environmental Quality Act.
Thank you, I'll do that.
Okay, there's a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, and secondly, we need the resolution.
So I'd like us to adopt the resolution,
Roll call.
or introduce the resolution.
Councilmember O'Connell.
Aye.
Councilmember Medina.
Aye.
Councilmember Ibera.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Ruane.
Aye.
Mayor Franzella.
Aye. And the third item we need is a motion to delegate authority for the city manager to sign the agreement for individual sales with SFPUC.
And
Motion.
make that motion.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Art, thanks for a great job. Always a pleasure to see you here.